You watch Avengers Endgame.
I don't know. I haven't really liked any of the Avengers movies. The last one was okay.
Is he dumb?
Don't spoil anything.
No, that's fine. I also think every Spider-Man movie has been god awful. Every X-Men movie except that one where they went into the past. That one was okay. You know, when they fought the robots that like stabbed everybody.
So like Terminator.
Spoilers.
Yeah, kind of, the one that's kind of like Terminator.
I haven't seen any of that movies.
Oh, they're terrible.
Yeah.
Except that one. That
What
one.
about
What
Wolverine?
movies do you like?
Pink comedy.
None of them.
Godfather's good. No, I hate Sam. Except for the first 10 minutes. That's good.
Do you like Kingsman?
I think Forrest Gump might be one of the worst movies ever. But everyone has to like it. But it's terrible. It's terrible.
You're gonna hate this.
No.
I'm taking a tan dance. Dominic is here. How to golf?
Yes.
So that I can vote them individually.
I was at golf yesterday. Yes.
How did it go?
It was okay.
Did you break 100?
No, it was only 9 holes. But I would have broken.
Definitely
Wait, no.
broke 100.
Oh, that looks bad.
Yes, but I would have not broken 100 if it was not 9 holes.
You went over 50.
Yeah, it was, dude. I watched the video of it.
And a lot.
That was the same picture.
She might be sick.
She's probably at home
A
sleeping.
little bit of water here.
Oh, she got a concussion, you know.
Mason.
Well,
I think it's live. Yeah, it is.
Mason, you're going to have to put the phone away soon. Riley.
That sounds so like sinister. Mason, you're gonna have to put the phone on.
Kayla. Gracie. How's your stress level? How's your stress level? Terrible. Really?
Yeah. I didn't know.
Do you know what you're doing to us?
Am I doing it?
I haven't slept in days.
Riley.
I
Riley.
haven't slept more.
Just kidding. I slept a lot.
Riley, did you get a haircut?
yes, it is.
Oh my God, you're adorable. Oh my God, look at those dimples. Girls, he has dimples. Look, he's cute. You're an Adonis.
What?
It's like that one reindeer from Rudolph. It's
Alice.
like, oh yeah, it was Rudolph. Because she was like, you're cute. He's like,
All right.
I'm cute. So he like flies.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk for a little while, then you're going to talk for a little while, and then the rest of the hour will be conference time, especially those of you that have essays to finish. Phone's away. Phone's really away. Phone's really very away.
You're really very away.
I'm talking for this slide.
Yeah, but what, you said we were gonna talk.
You are gonna talk soon.
For what?
You'll find out. It's easy. Okay, so I'm talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis. So again, this would be in the America in the world realm, and as such, you can again use it as evidence for either the world is better off with American involvement or worse off. I would say that this is evidence. Either way. Yesterday we talked about a guy named Fidel Castro who overthrew the Batista government in Cuba. And this was upsetting to the Americans because Cuba was one of our trophies from the Spanish-American War, and a lot of American investment. Just here. Take that back.
I don't know.
Untake, undo what you just did.
I am very sorry for interrupting your plan.
It never happened. All right. A large chunk of Cubans actually fled to Miami, and because they were wealthy capitalists who were not interested in Cuba becoming a communist country, so they flee to the shores of Miami, and there they plot. They plot to overthrow the newly established communist government in Cuba. Communism very appealing to the people of Cuba, most of whom are very poor. I don't know if any of you have ever done this, but you go to Mexico on a beautiful vacation, and there you are on this lovely resort. Within 50 miles of you are hundreds of thousands of dirt poor Mexicans. How do you live with yourselves? That's what's going on here in Cuba, right? The rich Americans are on the coast, they're gambling, they're on the beach, they're living the high life. Meanwhile, Cubans are dirt poor. And Fidel thought that was wrong. And so he overthrows it, nationalizes everything. This makes the Americans mad. And so the US government actually helps these people that have fled to Miami. They actually help them. They help them, they train them, they arm them. And this is called the Bay of Pigs invasion. The Cubans that fled are now going to re-invade at something called the Bay of Pigs, which is right there, the Bay of Pigs invasion. Okay? And what's going to happen is that the American Air Force is going to fly ahead of them, bomb the snot out of Cuba, soften them up, and then leave. And then the Cuban Liberation Army is going to land, and everyone's going to say, my God, they're back, hooray, and overthrow Fidel Castro, and everything will be great. And this plan was developed under Eisenhower, who then is no longer president. It's not carried out until Kennedy. So Kennedy becomes president. So the CIA informed Kennedy, like, hey, Mr. President, here's a plan that is in the works. We're going to do this. Similar to when FDR died, Truman was told about the bombs. When Ike goes away, Kennedy was informed about the Bay of Pigs invasion. Only Kennedy did something that Truman didn't do. He said, that's stupid. That is a stupid plan. I'm not suggesting that the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki was stupid. What I'm saying is that the next president decided not to carry through with the plan. He said that was dumb. So no planes were flown to Cuba. But the problem was no one told the Cubans that were going to invade. So they did the invasion anyway. And they were shocked when they got shot. Like, this isn't supposed to happen. Right? Why are you shooting? Aren't you supposed to be dead already? Right? So it was a total failure, a complete failure. The Bay of Pigs invasion was a complete failure. But if you're Fidel Castro, the new leader of Cuba, you know that the Americans aren't going to stop. Like, they'll try again. At least that's what you believe. So the question is, who does Castro turn for help? Who do you think he turns for help? The Soviet Union, right? The enemy of the United States. The other country with nuclear missiles. And what do you suppose the Soviets have that would deter an American invasion? Nuclear missiles. Exactly. So the Soviet Union arms Cuba with nuclear missiles. Okay. You're looking at that map next. It's a bad map, but what you're looking at is the American reaction after learning from U-2 spy planes. Remember U-2 spy planes, right? Those planes that fly really high. So American spy planes flew over Cuba, found evidence of these missiles, and said, whoa, you can't give Cuba missiles. That violates the Monroe Doctrine. Remember the Monroe Doctrine? No European interference in Latin American affairs. And of course, the Soviets said, oh, the Monroe Doctrine, that's right. That internationally recognized piece of law. Did anyone pick up the sarcasm? What am I suggesting? It's a U.S. policy. We don't have to recognize American policy. Here's our policy. You can't wear purple. Oh, Americans in Minnesota. You can't just make up something and have the world expect to obey it. So screw you and your Monroe Doctrine. And so the American Navy set up a blockade. That's the circle. This is the U.S. Navy. Once again, what we have is a blockade, not an invasion, a surround and wait policy. Okay? Remember, some of you in your essay, or some of you that are still working on your essay, an example of synthesis where it worked was this one. It worked. This absolutely worked. Okay? We surrounded Cuba and basically said any Soviet ship that tries to cross this line will be sunk. And that line represents the Soviet boat that said, we're not turning around. We're not turning around. And if you sink us, it's on. Let's go. And the Americans said, if that boat crosses, we will sink it, and then it's out. Let's go. This is in October of 1963. Kennedy's president. Right? In the history of the Cold War, this is the closest we've ever come to actual war with the Soviet Union. This was when they actually thought it's happening. This is going to happen, right? Because that boat was approaching that line. And it took 13 days for that boat to cross the Atlantic. And the Soviets kept saying, it's not turning around. And the Americans kept saying, okay, we'll sink it. We're going to sink that boat. And if the Soviets said, if you sink it, you started it. And the Americans said, you started it, your mom. So.
What's that other line that's like going in and then going out?
I don't know. Does anyone know what was the resolution? Did the Soviet boat turn around? Did it cross? Was it sunk? Do we know? An iceberg. It said, iceberg right ahead. And the captain went down with the ship. No, it turned around. The boat turned around. Right? The boat turned around. So we win, right? There was an agreement made. So let's just think this through. In what does Cuba want? Why do they want the missiles? Okay. Guess what we promised? We'll leave Cuba alone. So we'll leave Cuba alone. Now, what do the Americans want? The missiles to get out. There it is, right? You remove the missiles, we will promise we will not invade Cuba. Deal. Okay? That is not, by the way, that was not common knowledge. To the people at the time, the Soviets chickened out. We made it look like that, absolutely right. Okay? This is a battle for perception. But in reality, yeah, they removed the missiles, but we agreed to leave Cuba alone, and we haven't really honored that promise, and I'll explain that in a minute. But there is a third part to this that was not known until 1990. So this happened in 1963. In 1990, it was revealed that there was a third part to this deal that made it somewhat more Soviet, maybe kind of won this little confrontation. Maybe. So that's right. So looking at the world map there, that green country right there, that is a nation called Turkey. I have to show you this. This is one of these stupid moments that I have to do. So.
This happened a lot in World and Conflict. The rubber ducky video.
The rubber ducky. Family Feud Turkey.
The entire Game of Thrones timeline explained.
Plug
Is
this
this what it
in.
used to be?
Fairly stupid, but that's all right. This is the British version of Family Feud.
Oh, well, oh, me up, Bob. So on we go with mutton gel. There are 15 seconds. Now, one of you's got to go in.
I want to comment. Notice the British teeth. They are infamous for not really brushing their teeth. British commercials advertise toothpaste. We have less sugar than other toothpastes. That's an exaggeration, but you get the idea. I mean, look at the gaps in those teeth.
Stuff from up
to the dart. Hope he never comes back. And, there are 15 seconds on the clock. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. The clock will not start until I've asked the first question. All clear? Good luck, and I hope you win the money. Name something people take with them to the beach.
A town.
The first thing you buy in a supermarket.
Bread.
A food often stuffed.
Chicken.
Any famous snooker player.
Hurricane Higgins.
An outdoor ball game.
Tennis.
Tennis. Let's see if you're on your way to £1,000. Right? Name something people take with them to the beach. You said a towel, and the survey said 18. The first thing you buy in a supermarket, you said bread, and the answer to that was 28. A food often stuffed, you said chicken, and that was the top marks. That was 58. Yeah. We said any famous snooker player, you said Hurricane Higgins, and the score for that was 14. And then we said an outdoor ball game, you said tennis, and the survey said 11. So you got 131. Pretty good. Get that there.
That says 13.
Yeah, I saw that. I heard about that.
Hello, Bob. It's nice to see you sober. And now you've got 20 seconds on the clock. It will not start until I've asked you the first question. You're in a pretty good position, so if you get it right, you could walk away with a big lot of money. When you hear this, it means that the question has been answered, so we will ask you to do it again. Okay? All right. We're starting from now. All ready? All set?
Yeah.
Name something people take with them to the beach.
Turkey.
The first thing you buy in a supermarket.
Turkey.
A food often stuffed.
Turkey.
Any famous snooker player.
Hurricane Higgins.
Let's try again. Any famous snooker player. Your time is up. Yeah. Now, we've got a chance here of making £1,000 in 2 weeks. 2 weeks in Turkey. And I said to you, name something people take with them to the beach. You said, the answer was, the first thing you buy in a supermarket. The answer was, and the survey gave you, a food often stuffed. You said, and that gave you 21.
Anyone?
No, you can't.
You have to get.
Oh.
In America.
So anyway,
So why do you say it in that high pitch?
So why do you say it like that?
The other you had 131, he had 132.
Turkey? No, there are 2.
so anyway,
Oh. You got 21.
the nation Turkey is a member of NATO. We had missiles in Turkey. So Turkey is to the Soviets what Cuba is to us, a nation on our doorstep with missiles pointed at us. And in the agreement, not only did we promise not to invade Cuba, we removed our missiles from Turkey in exchange for a promise not to invade Cuba and them removing. So that does scale it a little bit more even than previously known. There you go. Okay. Any questions there?
Who came up with the compromise?
Sorry?
Who made the compromise?
I know the answer.
It was Turkey.
To a large extent, it was it was a guy by the name of Khrushchev. He's the leader of the Soviet Union, Khrushchev, and Kennedy. And then the American ambassador who lived in Moscow was actually good friends with the Soviet leader. And so they were able to kind of talk frankly and openly and honestly about it. So that's good. All right. Last thing I'm going to mention is, do you remember me yesterday pointing out the concern of missiles in space? And the Americans and the Soviets, and I would say a strong argument about making the world a safer place, the Americans and the Soviets both were not interested in putting missiles in space. Neither wanted the other one to do it. And so agreed to a treaty banning any sort of testing of nuclear weapons in the atmosphere. And the Americans had done that. What they did was they dropped a test bomb and then blew it up in the air and then measured the effectiveness of it. You can test in the air, you can test in the water, you can test on ground, you can test underground. So this is the first one where you can't test in the atmosphere. Right? And that was seen as a step toward no weapons in space. Okay.
Is there a name for the treaty?
Probably.
Okay.
Okay, so here's your step in this little exercise. I'm going to number you 1 through 6. If you're a 1, you're responsible for coming up with what was the Peace Corps? What is it? What is it about? What was it for? When was it started? Who started it? All that stuff. If you're number 2, your responsibility is what was this thing called the New Frontier? What was it? Okay, here's a clue. It had everything to do with John Kennedy. Okay. Number 3, tell us about the moon landing. If you're number 4, you have the Congo. What happened in Congo during Kennedy's presidency? That's the question. What happened in Congo? Congo is this blue country right there. See that? What happened? And frankly, who cares? What difference does it make? What happened? Number 5, Laos. Laos is that country right there. It's right next to Vietnam, right there. What happened? And then if you're a 6, what was this thing called the Alliance for Peace? What was it? Alliance for Peace. Okay, pretty simple. I'm starting over there. You're a 1. You with the face. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'll give you 5 minutes. I think that would be.
Can we just do it by ourselves or we
What
get
are we
into
doing?
Either way,
I'm so lost.
take that back.
No, because I don't know what we're doing.
You're number 6.
Yes, I know, but what am I
Wait,
doing
what was
with
it?
that information? I'm just figuring out what it is.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay.
Okay, so you can use your book, you can use technology, I don't care. I don't need a 10-minute complete report on this. I need about 30 seconds-ish. What was it? Okay, you can work together with your fellow numbered people or on your own arm. I'll see you at 9:05.
All right.
The internet says it's Alliance for Progress.
Alliance for Progress, that's right. I should fix that.
Let's look it up.
July.
I don't understand what we're doing. Like with Kennedy?
Hey, if you're on number 4, tell me, who did Congo belong to? Right? What I've introduced to you before is that yes, the U.S. was trying to fight communism, but also imperialism, which put us sometimes at odds with the British and the French because they had empires. So who did Congo belong to? Who did Laos belong to? Right? What European country claimed it as part of its empire is what I'm really asking. Okay.
Wait, can I like ask if I'm right? Is it?
We're
I'm
trying to
trying to
walk
like
down
have like the same economic thing as between Latin America and US.
What does that mean?
Was it
Like,
Brazil?
what is it called? Like a money system? Is that what you're
Oh yeah, right. So it was a financial arrangement. Yeah.
I think you want You want us to talk about like what Kennedy wanted for the moon?
Yeah.
Like why?
Why? Exactly.
Okay, Eve, I found the why.
No.
I'll ask.
Kennedy felt great pressure to have the United States catch up to overtake the Soviet
No, it was
Union
not
in the
subsidy.
space race.
Yeah. It had a lot to do with space, but it wasn't totally space.
Spacey.
You're spacey.
Oh, you heard it.
Hey, Connor, why can you not do mathematics?
I think I say we stay where we are.
I can.
Mr. Potter, why
And
wouldn't
you
you have
choose
that
achieving a
aspect?
push on man,
I
and then
learned.
ultimately a man
Let's just
movement
go with this.
become
It says, Mr. Potter
to
can't
understand in the political context of the
What's the Mr. Potter
historical
again?
era.
Mr.
World
Potter
War II
candy.
had introduced many new and deadly innovations, including blitzkrieg style
Oh,
surprise
wow.
attacks,
But not.
the invasion of Poland on the attack of Pearl Harbor. The V-2 rocket, a ballistic missile which killed thousands in attack.
One L.
And the
There you go.
atom bomb which killed hundreds of thousands of atomic
I
bombs.
like how you had to change it so
1915
that it
tension
was
mounted
spelled
between the
wrong.
two ideological
No,
opposed
so it's spelled right.
powers of the United States and the Soviet Union that have emerged as victors in the conflict, particularly after the development of both the countries.
Do we have enough time? I don't need to wait 5 minutes.
No, we're
I
good.
believe that I wrote in footnote.
Let's go.
The rocket to the moon.
It's all.
One thing I want to sort of set the table with here, this would be context, is you have to understand that communism is a rejection of colonialism, right? When we started this class with Columbus sailing that way, that started European empires and European exploitation of Africa and the Middle East and to a certain extent North America, South America, Central America, and exploiting the wealth for their own benefit. Communism is a rejection of that. So the U.S. is sort of in this bit of a dilemma where we also reject colonialism, but we don't side with communism either. So we're sort of in a pickle. What if countries like, for example, Congo and Laos want to become independent countries? They want to break away from their European master. Shouldn't and wouldn't we be in favor of that? Shouldn't we be in favor of that? None of that was on tape. Doggone it. I'm asking a question now. Wouldn't the U.S. be in favor of that? You would think so, right? And yet, we have to be careful here because sometimes these African and Asian nations, in an effort to break away from European colonial rulers, turn to communism as an alternative economic system, and we didn't like that very much. Okay, so I've set the table. All right, here we go. So what was the Peace Corps? What?
It was kind of like an international, well, it was started by John F. Kennedy, and it's a volunteer program to help countries around the world and improve the U.S.'s relationship with the populations that were volunteering.
Perfect. Right? Think of the way foreigners see America. Even today, it's a soldier, or it's McDonald's, or it's the Avengers, right? American culture is rock and roll and violent movies and nudie movies and the Marines and Kennedy was concerned that the U.S. was going to lose the moral high ground to the Soviets because look at what we're selling. It's shallow. It's sort of decrepit. It's immoral. It's materialistic. And so, how about a better version of America in other lands? Peace Corps, right? Volunteers going to poor areas and helping those people succeed. And as a result, don't go communist, right? My brother was in the Peace Corps. He was in Liberia, which is a dirt poor country in Africa, right? And he went from village to village, setting up. How about my brother?
No, like this.
Well, you should know what it is, right? You could use that as an example of American positive influence in the world. I think Peace Corps is an outstanding example. One time in Liberia, by the way, he got a ride from a guy in a pickup truck, and who told him to hop in the back, and it was hay. Fell asleep, woke up. The truck was not running. He's laying down. He hears like clicks and murmurs, and he's like, "What the heck is going on here?" He sits up, looks around, and he said there were about 100 people with guns, all pointing at him, saying, CIA, 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 CIA. They thought he was a spy for the CIA. He had $20 on him, and he bribed his way out.
How in the world with $1
$20 goes a long way in Liberia. Okay. Any questions on the Peace Corps? That kind of thing. All right. What was the new frontier?
Oh, space-ish. Somewhat space, somewhat like.
It's like what he used to,
Who's he?
and John F. Kennedy
Very good.
used to influence his followers, like talk about how he's going to go into space and he's going to fix the poverty and
Very good. Right. It's Kennedy's presidency, right? FDR had the New Deal. Truman had the Fair Deal. I don't know what Eisenhower had. Kennedy has the new frontier, right? It's kind of romantic. What made America great when we were expanding westward was the idea of a frontier, right? That there's always somewhere to go, and who's going to lead the way? America. America's going to lead the way. So, what's the new frontier? The moon? Peace? Poverty? Health? Those are the new frontiers. And who's going to go first? America. Right? It's a bold idea that America's going to lead the way to X, whatever X is. Just like America led the way with westward expansion, we're going to lead the way to the moon. We're going to lead the way to peace. We're going to lead the way to prosperity. We're going to lead the way to curing disease. We're going to lead the way to racial desegregation, right? We're going to fix it, whatever it is. So the new frontier is his presidency. Okay, as an example, moon landing. What about it?
He said in 1961, he told everyone we're going to go to the moon before the end of the decade. And the main reason to do this was he felt great pressure to have the United States catch up or pass the Soviet Union.
Very
in the space
good.
race.
Excellent, right? Almost nothing to add here, right? Sputnik had already been launched. The Americans were well behind, and he says we're gonna beat the Soviets to the moon, which at the time was insane. No, we're not. And he said not only we're gonna do it in 10 years, 10 years, which again was seen as crazy. No way. NASA started because of it. You study math and science now because of it, to a large extent. STEM is a result of Kennedy. And the crazy thing is it happened, right? We did land on the moon first within 10 years. Now, Kennedy wasn't around by then. He had got himself shot. But still, I mean, in 1965, which, by the way, I was alive. I wasn't very old, but I was 2 months old, but I remember.
You remember it?
Okay. December of 1969. Okay, any questions? Okay. Congo, that's the country in the middle of Africa. Who owned it? Belgium owned it. It's a relic of colonialism. Little Belgium. That's the country Germany invaded twice on their way to France. Right? They still have, sorry?
That's just rude.
It's true. It still has colonies. And the Congo said, and what? What they do?
Congo had a descendants army and Belgium's ready in 1960.
Very good. So what does this have to do with the U.S.? We helped Congo? See, the problem there is, what do you mean when we helped Congo? You mean we helped Congo against Belgium? Or what does helped mean? We sent in humanitarian aid and blankets and medicine, and is that what we mean? This is a test for the United Nations. So the UN stepped in with a military force and just said, let's stop fighting. And Congo gained their independence shortly thereafter. But a UN military force with American participation sort of stepped in and kept the peace, right? So made the world a better place, right? You could argue. How about Laos? Who did that belong to? Laos is in Southeast Asia. That should give you a huge clue. That
France owns pretty much this whole area right here. And they're tied in very closely with what happened in Vietnam. The French owned them. Then when the French got kicked out, the communists and the royalists were fighting. The royalists got backed by the US. The communists got backed by the Soviets. and they fought up until the peace deal happened, and then there was like, it was divided up just like Germany was, and then they continued to fight, and there were in another civil war, and in 1975 the communists took over pretty much all of Laos because it was so close to that in the Vietnam.
Holy. Any questions?
Why is it teaching?
I ask that every day,
It is.
right? It belonged to France. The French lost it to the Japanese during World War II, and then tried to take it back in a huge bit of irony, right? Here we are, we're fighting against the Germans because they're invading their enemy, their neighbors, and then the French have the audacity to try and take back a colony. And you know, the Laotians are like, what are you doing, France? Didn't you just fight the Germans for doing what you are now doing? And were to a large extent successful. But this is a stepping stone towards American involvement in that area, right? And that is that the Americans sort of supported the French efforts to reconquer Laos. Not with American soldiers yet, but aid, money, weapons. Okay, last thing here, and then we're done. What was the Alliance for Progress? No, she knows it. So go ahead.
It was John F. Kennedy trying to establish like the same money system between the U.S. and Latin America.
Good. So it was a financial arrangement. Did anyone else have this one? You get anything?
Just that you wanted to provide funding for Latin America and like spread democracy and promote economic.
Very good. Again, the belief is a rich country doesn't want communism. So how do you prevent communism? Make the country rich. In essence, this is the same thing as the Marshall Plan. Remember the Marshall Plan? Marshall Plan was our effort to make sure Western Europe didn't go communist by giving them money. And saying, here, rebuild your industry. Same thing. Alliance of Progress, here, Latin America, here's some money. Develop your industries. An industrious Central and South American nation is a nation that does not go communist. That was the belief. Mixed results for reasons that we'll explore later. Any questions? Okay. There are the essays, there are the computers, there are you. Yeah.
I have a meeting about my schedule.